Hey everyone, Ranger William here at Cowpens National Battlefield, bringing you a virtual tour along with Ranger Roland Bissonnette to help celebrate the celebration of freedom on this 4th of July. Now we're looking here at a map of the Cowpens Battlefield Trail. We're right here behind the Visitor Center to give a little bit of background about what led up to this January 17th, 1781 clash. Now the forces out here in western South Carolina are going to be composed under Brigadier General Daniel Morgan and Lieutenant Colonel Bannister Tarleton. What's led up to this moment is Morgan is out here in western South Carolina with a force of American soldiers, cavalry, continentals, and militia with orders to encourage all the local patriot militia. Well, the British can't have that. So they send Tarleton and a large force to pursue and either destroy Morgan or drive him into Cornwallis's army. We're going to head down the battlefield trail, stopping at different locations along the way, talk a little bit more about the different troops that were there, and walk you through this pivotal battle.
Park Ranger Roland Bissonnette from Cowpens National Battlefield, taking over from where Park Ranger Will Caldwell left off. We are currently out on the battlefield, a location about right here. So in between where Washington's light dragoons were placed and Morgan's Continental infantry. If you pan over to the left, this low area over here behind the tree line is where William Washington was placed with his Continental Light Dragoons. The men are placed over here because once you get into that trees, because the land dips down, and with Washington's men on horseback, you can't see them. So when they come charging out to engage either the British mounted forces or the British infantry, it is a shock tactic. If we pan now over to the right, over here, and back of my shoulder back here is the Washington Light Infantry Monument, sitting about right here on the battlefield. That was placed in 1856, a location where Morgan's Continental Infantry is placed. Morgan has about 320 Continental Regulars and about 200 Virginia State Militia that comprise Morgan's main battle line here. If you also look down the field as well, you can see the terrain that Morgan uses to his advantage. When you're looking down here and you got Morgan's view, it's pretty much open, so you can see everything. So Morgan's got the whole battle in back of him. As we also move down the field, our next stopping point on the map is going to be right here where Andrew Pickens placed his line of militia. Alright, Park Ranger Roland Bissonnette back with you again at Cowpens National Battlefield. On the map, we are located right here at the line of Howard's Continentals under Morgan's command. We are also located on the Green River Road. Like if you look down here, this road transverses all the way up into Mills Gap, North Carolina. It will also transverse down through South Carolina, linking up with other roads that will eventually link up to Charleston. Daniel Morgan, the morning of January 16th, is about 12 miles away southeast of here, a location called Burr's Mill. He learns that Banassery Charlton has crossed over the Packlet River 6 to 7 miles from his location. So Morgan knows that he has to pack up and move. He cannot stay. Morgan's original plan is to transverse down this road, make his way over the Broad River, up into North Carolina. Colonel Andrew Pickens, who will lead the militia forces here, tells Morgan that if you cross over the Broad River, the South Carolina militia will not follow you. They will probably disband and go home. So Morgan has to pick a location in South Carolina to fight. One of Morgan's scouts, Dennis Trammell, brings Morgan here to the Cowpens. So Morgan rides in, scouts the field, likes what he sees. Ironically, Cowpens is also where the Over Mountain men who would end up So fighting at the Battle of Kings Mountain, October 7th, 1780, stopped here October 6th of 1780. That will have a very big effect on militia coming in as well. Our next stopping point down the field is going to be about down here, talking about Morgan's militia. Park Ranger Roland Bissonnette back again on the battlefield trail at Cowpens. We are located in the area of Andrew Pickens' militia. Along this line right here, Daniel Morgan was not sure how many militiamen would answer his call to come to the Cowpens. Approximately 1,000 men, so militiamen, would end up coming here to support Morgan in his battle. Morgan forms two lines of militia. On the main line of militia here, over here, off to the left, is also where Morgan posts his sharpshooters. Men of North Carolina and Georgia, they will be the first units that encounter the British after they come here to the field. Covering a little bit about the British as well. Right here is a silhouette of a 3-pound Grasshopper cannon. Morgan has no artillery in his command. Tarleton has 2 3-pounders that are loaded and fired by the 4th Royal Artillery. Combined eyewitness accounts is the 2 cannons fire about 10 shots. Then the cannons are silenced and they will both eventually be captured here. So they are very important pieces on the field, but they do not play much of an impact in the battle. So militia out here. So Andrew Pickens are asked to give Morgan 2 good shots, and then you're free to run him back. Of the Continentals, regroup on a place down the field, approximately down back that way. The militia commands here will fire by company, starting with Brandon over here and then working back. So like as I said, sharpshooters open up first. Next stopping point on the battlefield, and that's where Ranger Will Caldwell will take back over again, is down here at the British line.
Hey everyone, Ranger William again, picking up where Ranger Roland left off. We've made our way down the American lines to the different Patriot positions. We are now down here near where the British deployed on the morning of January 17th, 1781. Now when you look here behind me, you'll get a good view of what the British infantry and Tarleton himself saw on that daybreak. As you can see, it's a much larger rise here behind me than what Morgan was looking at from the back down. This ridge would have ran all the way across the width of the field, completely blocking the British ability to see what is waiting behind that ridge. Now on the crest and forward slope of that, you would have a scattering of the American sharpshooters, the riflemen that Ranger Roland was talking about. Now the big impact for these guys on the battle is their skill as riflemen, their ability with their hunting rifles to target individual men from great distances, 200 to 300 yards. Now these men are going to begin firing on the British as soon as they come into formation, causing confusion and chaos within the British ranks as they lose their chain of command, as they lose some of their leadership. Now one other thing that really throws off the British deployment in advance is the native plant life. Here at Cowpens Battlefield, we're trying to restore some of the river cane that would have been growing all along the edges of the field, but especially down here where the British first deployed. These large thickets, called cane brakes, would grow 10, 12, 15 feet high, and as you can see, very dense. It's impossible to form a line of men and move in formation through one of these cane brakes. So you can imagine being the British infantry as you're trying to make your way through this, trying to pick and weave your way around the cane, trying to find your officers, and as soon as you exit that cane, you're met with that massive ridge and rifle fire begins hitting your line. This is going to cause a lot of problems to the British left wing, as we'll see from their main deployment point, where we'll pick up with them back on the main wagon road. Hey everyone, Ranger William again. We're picking up here right along the Green River Road, and if you look here behind me, this is going to be the British right wing. Now these men, this is composed of light infantry from several different detachments. Now the term light infantry means that these men were chosen from their various regiments for their speed, for their dexterity, for their marksmanship, and they've gone through special training to act as skirmishers in front of an army or flankers along the side, so they're very skilled at this kind of rough terrain, woods or bush fighting as the British are calling it. So behind me on the British right wing, where it's fairly open, you have the light infantry of the British Legion, the Prince of Wales American Regiment, the 16th Infantry, as well as the light infantry of the 71st Highlanders. Now the rest of the 71st Highlanders are going to be part of the British Reserve behind the main line. Now as you see, the field here behind me is a little more open than the canebrake that we were looking at earlier. These men form up, they're the first elements of the British to arrive and form on the field just before daybreak. The rest of the British column is going to halt, they're going to drop all unnecessary equipment, and the rest is going to form the British left wing. So we'll pivot around this way and let you see what they're going to be forming through. Now the British left wing, off to the left side of the road, these men are going to be the 7th Fusiliers, the 7th Royal Regiment, but also they're going to have some artillery. The 3-pound cannon that Roland was talking about, one of those is going to be right here on the road, and the other cannon is going to be assigned to the 7th, down here on the left. Now on the far left, right through that cane into the wood line, is where the 71st Highlanders were supposed to be. However, because of the thickness of the terrain, the thickness of that cane, the 71st cannot form there, and they're held back as a reserve. Now the British Army is not just infantry and artillery, but they have a lot of cavalry. Tarleton has with him here about 300 trained, skilled light dragoons. This is just a term for a light cavalryman who could serve on foot or in the saddle as needed, but here during the Southern Campaign of the Revolution, they're mostly going to be serving on horseback. Now, the main element of that cavalry is going to be 200 of the British Legion Dragoons, Tarleton's personal regiment, American colonists. They're going to be held back in reserve of the main army, and then you have 50 dragoons covering each flank in case there's any kind of surprise attack by the wily Americans. So once the British Army is starting to form up, the sun's starting to rise, Tarleton sees the American army down the field, and he orders his men to charge, advance quickly. Now you have to remember what brings Tarleton here. He's been pursuing Morgan for almost a week. He thinks Morgan is trying to escape those last few miles down the road and cross the Broad River into North Carolina. Now Tarleton knows if Morgan gets across that river, he will not be able to successfully pursue him. Morgan will have all these riflemen and infantry on the riverbanks. Tarleton will not be able to cross. So his whole idea here is to catch Morgan before he can escape. So when his infantry are forming up at daybreak, they see sharpshooters on the ridgeline. Tarleton knows he's caught Morgan's army, but he thinks Morgan is still on the run, trying to fight a rearguard action. So we'll join the British line, we'll advance forward here, head down the wagon road, right into the middle of the American lines, and see if we can't catch them. Ranger William here again. We last left off here at the British line where they had formed and they had begun to push forward. Now because of the thick river cane that was on the left of the British line, the left wing is going to be slowed down, delayed in their formation. The right wing of the British are advancing at a little more rapid pace. Now as they're coming forward towards the American lines, coming from their deployment point here down the road behind me, they're advancing towards the American sharpshooters, Morgan's first line. Now you can hear the crack of a rifle versus the duller thud that a musket would make, and you can see these scattered militia here on the hillside, so these British infantry know who they're facing against. If you want to try and imagine them moving down the field, the British infantry are not side by side slowly moving into these marksmen, but they are experienced, trained light infantry. They're using bushfighting and extended files. Tarleton even says that it's the thin nature of his line that's partially to blame for his defeat here. Now, when you're talking about extended order, you're looking at these infantry are spread out all the way across this open area, at least 1 arm's length between each man, 1 yard between the front and the rear ranks. So these men are a thin line all across the field, quickly moving forward at almost like a slow jog, and they're moving forward with fixed bayonets. They know that these riflemen up here, these scattered militia, need about 45 seconds to reload after a single shot. And in that time, these trained infantry with their bayonets can close in, get in hand-to-hand combat where they have the advantage, and push these riflemen back. Now where we're standing here, this is on the crest of that main ridge that ran all the way across the field. So as the British infantry push forward after those riflemen, the riflemen will start to retreat. They fall back. From where they were here on the crest and forward slope of the ridge, they fall back and begin to merge in with Andrew Pickens' militia line, the second line of Morgan's army, falling in the gaps between the companies and on the flanks. Now when the British coming forward across the ridge, when they see that movement, they think they're winning. They think they have these militia on the run, so they keep advancing rapidly. They don't want to slow down or disengage and allow these riflemen to escape, regroup, and come back on the attack. So the faster these riflemen run away, the faster the British pursue. Now once the British reach the crest of the ridge, they look down the road here, and they are looking at Andrew Pickens' second line, the main militia body. Tarleton in his memoirs talks about seeing 1,000 rebel militia, like Ranger Roland mentioned earlier, in formation here across the field. Now when the British see this, they're a little surprised that there's so many militia here, but the militia are not firing. From where we are to where the militia were positioned is within musket range. It's well within 200 yards for a volley of musket fire, and most of these militia have rifles. So we are definitely within range of those men. When the British see the militia not firing, they think the militia are about to panic, break, and run. They've already chased away one line of Americans. There's nothing to stop them from keeping the charge going, spread that fear into the second line, and chase away the main militia body. So we're going to pick up following the advance down the road. We're going to head down here to where the main militia line was and see what their response is to this British charge.
All right, Park Ranger Roland Bissonnette picking up again from where Park Ranger Will Caldwell left off. The Patriot sharpshooters up here have taken their shots, and they've fallen back into the main line of militia here under Andrew Pickens. The British forces, as Ranger Will talked about, are coming up the road. They've chased the sharpshooters back here. So when the British come up over that ridge, Daniel Morgan's orders to the militiamen along here is don't shoot until they get to killing distance. Give me 2 good shots, and then you're free to run them back of the Continental line, regroup, and stay there. So in case I need you, I can bring you back in again. The British, who just chased the sharpshooters back here, as Ranger Will said, the militia here are not firing. The British are in rifle range, but they're not firing. So the British are not going to stop to load and shoot. The British are just going to continue to bayonet charge down the field, because that is the easiest way to chase a militia off the field, is with a bayonet charge. So Andrew Pickens waits until that line of British is about 50 yards off. Then he tells them to let loose a volley, and it staggers the British. Every militia regiment here is supposed to get off 2 shots, but only Brandon over here on the right side is actually able to get off a second volley. The British are coming up too fast, so the militiamen do break, as they're told, and they run him back of the Continental line. As the militia is running back, Tarleton's 17th Light Dragoons over here on the right flank are going to come down the field to chase the militia off the field. And at this point here, I'm going to turn this back over to Ranger Will Caldwell, so he will pick it up right here as the 17th Light Dragoons are chasing the militia down the field.
Hey, Ranger William here, picking back up with the British assault. The British line from where we first began down the road, they've advanced forward down the field, pushing back each line of Morgan's army almost with no effort. They're just showing their bayonets, they're charging forward, the militia are firing, but then they're falling back. So by this point, the British line has advanced all the way to within musket range of the main backbone of Morgan's army, the Continentals. Now the militia that are falling back, when Tarleton can see them quickly escaping from his infantry, like Ranger Roland mentioned, the 17th Light Dragoons, that's going to be part of the British cavalry protecting the British right wing. So when these guys start to deploy forward, there's 50 of these horsemen, experienced British veterans. They're going to be on large horses, 25 horses wide, 2 ranks deep, and they begin to move forward. Now, a cavalry charge is going to be a very psychological weapon as well as physical. These men are going to be thundering forward. You can feel the ground shake when this battalion moves out, and they're going to have very large horses, very large swords, and they're going to raise a cheer. So you can imagine being the militia as they're retreating back. It's hard to see through all the foliage now, but they're retreating back through part of the woods to a clearing where they're trying to reform and regroup. This is when they are hit by the 17th Light Dragoons. Again, 50 dragoons just smashing into their numbers here, using the horse as a weapon to trample men down, as well as bring down these heavy, cleaving, hacking swords. Now, some militia accounts from this moment talk about receiving 7, 10, 12 saber wounds on their heads, shoulders, raised arms, talk about being hit by 200, 300 cavalry. It's only 50 dragoons, but it feels like hundreds. That's how terrified these militia are. Now, like Ranger Roland also mentioned earlier, the American Dragoons, William Washington, the 3rd Continental Light Dragoons, where are they? Well, keep swinging around here, and you can see in the far distance that heavy tree line back where those American Dragoons are hidden, down in that gully, in that dip. Now, the British cavalry do not know where these American Dragoons are. They know they're here with the American forces somewhere, but they do not know they're there in the tree line. So William Washington, who's watching the British cavalry chase after the militia, he holds half of his command in readiness until he is sure the British are tunnel visioned enough on those militia that they won't see his men coming. That's when he gives the signal, and half of his command, about 80 troopers of the 3rd Continental Light Dragoons, come charging up out of the gully, out of the woods, and smash into the side, into the flank of the British 17th Light. You're going to be looking at these men just scattering the British Dragoons. You have accounts of men colliding the horses together with so much force that it launches men out of the saddle. One charge like that, they swing around and charge a second time through the British, scattering the 17th Light Dragoons, chasing them all the way back behind the British Army. They are no longer going to be an effective force on this battlefield. Now, one important detail right here is that William Washington does not only chase away the British cavalry on the British right, he then pulls his cavalry back together. He keeps them embodied, keeps them formed to use again during the battle. Now, while all that is happening, the main British infantry are where we're standing now. They've advanced down the road, they've chased away the militia, and they now see behind me the Continental line. They start this little shootout back and forth between these lines of men, blasts of musket fire on both sides of the field, all the way across the width right here. Now, the way these men are going to fire is called a rolling volley. It's a British tactic that the Continentals have learned. If my walking stick here was the Continental line, their far right company is going to fire first, and then the next and the next, all the way across the field. The idea of this is that someone is always ready, someone is always firing somewhere on the line. Because by the time the American left has fired, the right has reloaded, and they started again. One of the militiamen who saw this describes it as a beautiful thing to see, a constant sheet of flame from right to left. Now, after a few times of that, it's going to devolve into each company just loading and firing as quick as they can. The Continentals are doing this, the British are doing this. This is filling this area with lead and smoke and flame. Accounts talk about it being a most murderous fire and much slaughter being produced on both sides. These men are just slugging it out between these two lines of trained, disciplined regulars. The Continentals, battle-tested veterans, and the British regulars who've been involved for almost the entire war. These guys are just duking it out. Now, when Tarleton is here with his line, he can tell that he needs something to gain the advantage. His men do not have it in them to keep pushing through this fire and break those Continentals, but he has the Highlanders left. Remember when they first formed up down the field, there was not room for these Highlanders to deploy, and they have been held back as a reserve, about 200 men of the 71st Highland Regiment. Now that we've advanced this far down the field, it's a little bit wider, there's more room to maneuver, and he orders the Highlanders forward. So these 200 Highlanders, they swing up and around the British left. So you can imagine these 200 men advancing quickly, coming up and around the British left, following that tree line. This extends the British line far enough they're able to swing around the American flank, swing around the American side. This is a flanking maneuver. This is the best way to make your enemy fall back or leave, is by attacking them from two different directions at one time. And if you can imagine 200 yelling, charging Highlanders, possibly with a bagpiper going, amidst all this screaming, yelling, chaos, gunfire, and smoke of this battle, this is a major psychological weapon that's going to give the British the advantage and break the Continentals. We're going to catch up with Ranger Roland a little bit further down the field at the Continental line and see how they react and respond to this new Highlander threat.
All right, Park Ranger Roland Bissonnette picking back up again. So from where Ranger Will Caldwell left off, right here on Morgan's main line of Continentals. Ranger Will got you to the point, so where the Highlanders are charging over here on Howard's right side. If I can kind of put you in the moment in that battle, you are here. You are a Continental. You've been shooting. The morning of January 17th, it rained a lot over the winter of 1780 to 1781. Black powder, so what both Continentals and British shoot, absorbs moisture. When you shoot it, the smoke it emits absorbs moisture. It's not going to blow away. It forms a thick fog and it just kind of hangs down on the field. So you are a Continental. John Eager Howard over here has seen the Highlanders are coming in on his right flank. John Eager Howard wants to order a right of refuse. So Virginians over here on the right are supposed to bend back to form a right angle. Continentals here, so Virginians are supposed to bend back so you can fight both front and flank. Well, to put you in that moment, the shooting, the sheets of fire, officers are screaming commands. Injured men are moaning or screaming in pain. The British over here are firing as well. The Highlanders are coming in down the field. Their bagpipes are blaring. Their drums are going. The 71st are screaming huzzah at the top of their lungs. All of this whirlwind of battle is trapped in this small area right here. If you were a Continental, and when John Eager Howard issues an order, you might and you might not be able to hear it. Howard's order is misunderstood. Howard, as I said, does want a right refuse. Some of the Virginians over here on the right do not actually turn to the right to take on the Highlanders. They about face all the way back, and they start to march back down the road. John Eager Howard knows this is not a moment of panic. This is a moment of opportunity. Because if I take the left side of my Continental line over here, I take the Maryland and the Delaware Continentals, about face them. I can march this whole line back. I can get this line back under order, load on the march, and I can pick the battle up about 20 yards down the field. So we're going to catch up about 20 yards down the field, down this way. All right, Park Ranger Roland Bissonnette picking up the Continental counterattack when John Eager Howard takes his entire Continental line, about faces him, and he marches them back about 20 yards to reform at a new line of battle. Daniel Morgan sees that Howard's men have left their position down the field and are marching back this way, down this way. Daniel Morgan asks John Eager Howard, "Are you beaten?" John Eager Howard responds back, "No." have you ever seen men marching in such good order to be beaten? Daniel Morgan knows that this is a move that Howard has planned. He picks a spot on the field of the Continentals are to stop at and counterattack at that point. William Washington, who has since returned to his spot back over here on the field, so if you look to the left, back over there in the low area, also sees the British forces who think that they have destroyed or beaten the Continental Army again. Just like they did at Camden, they completely break all discipline and they just start to charge down the field, the bayonet of the Continentals, and the battle is over. So William Washington sends a message to John Eager Howard. The British are coming on like a mob. Give them a fire and I will charge them. The Continentals did load on the march on their way back here. So we're going to kind of swing around. And so John Eager Howard is going to march his Continentals back to a spot about 25 yards back. As the British are coming up, Howard waits until they're about 10 yards off. Then the Continentals are told, in one motion, to about face, back like this, shoot point blank. The next order that John Eager Howard gives is going to turn the American Revolutionary War on its head, and that order is to charge bayonets. The Continental Army is going to charge ahead in a bayonet charge and break apart whatever is left of the British. It is also in this point here that William Washington comes back in on this part of the battlefield here to kind of sweep in on the left side of the Continentals. All the militia, who have regrouped over my left shoulder, are going to be brought back in over here on the right. They completely double envelop because the British forces on the front and both flank, and they completely trap them here on the battlefield. Daniel Morgan obtains a complete and total victory. This whole battle, from start to finish, took about 18 minutes. It is over and done quick. Daniel Morgan does obtain a double envelopment of the British force. It is a complete and total victory. We're going to be turning back over to Will Caldwell so he can cover the final aspect of this battle, of the cavalry action afterwards.
Hey everyone, Ranger William here again. Now we picked up with Ranger Roland completing the major fighting of the battle. We're standing right here in an area known as Morgan's Hill. This is going to be where the Continentals did that great turn, fire, and counterattack. So if you look here behind me, you have a view of the field where all of that fighting took place. The Continentals surging forward, the militia coming out of the tree line, the American cavalry coming around and crushing the British army. But what is Tarleton seeing? Where is he during all of this? Now, I mentioned when the British Army first arrived and formed up that there was a reserve of 200 cavalry behind the main British line. If you can imagine, a half mile down the road here behind me where the British first formed up, those cavalry have not advanced this entire action. They have held themselves back there at that first point. This is not what Tarleton wanted. This is not what Tarleton ordered. A few times he has sent a messenger back to those cavalry to have them come forward, support the army, and be that last final straw that he needs to break the American army. We don't know if the messenger arrived, if he was maybe shot by some American riflemen, or if the British cavalry simply refused the order to advance. But when Tarleton sees his army chasing after those Continentals, like Ranger Roland said, broken, charging like a mob, not maintaining their discipline, he knows he needs something more formed, more disciplined, and he goes back personally to see why his cavalry have not advanced. That's where Tarleton is when he hears those Continentals turn, fire, and crush his army. He comes back up the road, comes to see what's happening, sees his army running down the field, streaming away, trying to escape. Now Tarleton does not have his cavalry with him. Of those 200, when they see that the main British line is broken, when they see the American army chasing after them, they think it is not in order to be obeyed. They turn and they leave the battlefield. A few officers are described as even trying to cut down their own men to get the rest to turn and stand. So when Tarleton comes back up to the field and finds this mess of a situation, he only has about 54 cavalry under his command by that point. Mostly men from the 17th Light Dragoons, the shattered remnants of them being British regulars, and then the officers from his own British Legion cavalry. Now when he's trying to form his army, there's a famous moment that happens during the battle. William Washington, the American dragoon officer, he sees a group of British officers who he assumes one of them in the distinctive green jacket is Tarleton himself. He rides forward and starts yelling out a challenge, calling out to them, where is the bragging Tarleton? He wants to fight him mano a mano right here on the field. Now, it is not known if that actually was Tarleton that he saw or not. Tarleton does not talk about it in his memoirs, in his description of this battle. But what happens is this group of officers, rather than staying back and letting Washington find his man, they charge after this obviously high-ranking American dragoon officer. Now Washington is about to get into it with these 3 British, and here comes some of Washington's sergeants, some of his men, to help him out. This little whirling saber duel starts to happen back here behind the armies, and during this fight, Washington's life is saved several different times. Once by one of his sergeants, and another by a mysterious unknown waiter. We don't know who this person was. We know he was very young, possibly only a teenager. We don't know if he was white, if he was black, if he was enslaved or freed. We don't know what regiment he was with. But at a certain point of the battle, a British officer is about to strike a blow and kill Washington when this waiter rides up with a pistol, fires it, wounding the British officer, saving Washington's life. Now there's also a story of a saber breaking during this moment. In the original kind of traditional retelling of the story, it's believed that it's Washington's saber that's broken off at the hilt during this clash, and that's why he's defenseless, that's why he needs help. However, other rereadings of that same story make it a little more fuzzy. A British officer, possibly the one whose saber broke, turns to leave the fight, pulls a pistol, fires it at Washington, wounding his horse, and the British officers are able to leave. Tarleton regathers his cavalry. He realizes he cannot save his army. Everyone else has left the field. They're running for their lives. He decides he needs to do the same. He gets his men, they form, and they fall back. Now, for the next mile and a half down this road, there's going to be this running fight between Tarleton's cavalry and random American cavalry, American militia, as they're chasing after the fleeing British soldiers, looking for the British supply wagons about a mile and a half away. Washington, once he reforms his cavalry, gets them kind of done capturing most of the British infantry, they take off in pursuit of Tarleton, and they will chase them for over a full day. They're going to be trying to catch Tarleton, but they never will. Washington returns here to the field, and Morgan has already gone. Morgan does not wait here long after the battle, but he gets his wounded, the prisoners, the captured supplies, and they take off up to North Carolina. The British officers who were captured are paroled right here on the field. They're written little pieces of paper saying that you have been captured, you cannot fight until you've been exchanged, and they're sent back to British lines. Now, like Ranger Roland said, a very quick, very brief battle, but the casualties here are going to be a big changing point. The British have lost 110 men killed here, 230 wounded, and around 700 taken prisoner. Now, in addition to all of that, you have captured 800 British muskets, the 2 British cannon, and about 35 supply wagons. And for all of that victory, the Americans have only lost somewhere in the neighborhood of about 24 men. Now, that's just the numerical victory here. The major kind of meaning victory is that this has been Tarleton who's been defeated. This has been a turning point in the Southern Campaign where you've defeated this famous British officer, his elite British army, the flower of Cornwallis's army, as one British general called them. They have been crushed and broken by the old wagoner. So So we hope you enjoyed this little tour of Cowpens National Battlefield. We hope you're able to catch some more of our virtual programming. Check out our website, our Facebook page, and thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed.